Hi YouTubers, welcome back. Today we're going to be taking a look at our 9.5-inch rollers, and we'll discuss some of the pros and cons and some of the features that can come in handy. So let's get right into our demonstration. These are the rollers that we're going to be looking at today, and you can see the 9.5-inch nap there, and that will fit onto all of these rollers that are shown. But each one of them has different features, and I want to highlight what is good about them and what you can look for when you're shopping. So let's take a closer look at each one. This is a fairly straightforward roller cage, but it's actually pretty good quality, and I want to show you what to look for, because you can find some really cheap units, or inexpensive units I should say. Nothing seems to be that cheap anymore. But the first thing that we want to look at is the handle, and usually we have these mounted on an extension pole of some kind, but there are occasions where we have to use it by hand. So what we want to do is try to see if the handle is fairly ergonomic, how it sits in your hand. When I started out, I used to like the wooden handles because they were somewhat larger and fit in the hand a little better. So if you're a man, or if you have large hands, you might prefer a bigger grip on the cage, and the wooden ones usually do seem to be a little more substantial. But it doesn't hurt if it's plastic or even rubberized, as long as it feels good to grip it, because if you're using that for any amount of time, you want that to be fairly comfortable. The second thing is the wire here, and we want to make sure that it's not too flimsy. When we put some pressure on this, it's going to give a little bit, just because of the way it's designed. We can really put a bend in that. It's not going to serve our purposes in the long run, because there's so much pressure being put on that. We don't want it to give too much as we're working, and it will just weaken and actually bend out of shape. So we want to make sure that it's fairly sturdy. We can do a little test like that. And then last but not least is the actual cage spring. And what we want to consider when we look at this is that it has at least 5 springs. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Again, this is what's going to be required to keep that sleeve in position. When you put the sleeve on, there should be some resistance there. You should feel the spring cage pushing back on the sleeve, and once it's in place, you shouldn't be able to shake it off. You don't want any slipping from side to side. So that's what to look for on those. That's just a standard unit. Been watching my channel for any amount of time, you'll know that I don't like gimmicky tools as a rule. But Shoreline has a line of products that I find are kind of neat, and at first they don't look very practical, but when you get using them, they're really not too bad. So if we use the criteria I mentioned before, we take a look at that handle, we can see how it's shaped. It's ergonomically friendly, and also it's rubberized. So if you're a bit of a gripper, we shouldn't be gripping the cage that tightly, but if you happen to be a bit of a gripper, then this will come in really handy, really nicely. And if you're using a roller this size on a consistent basis, and using it manually, this is great. This is really easy on the hands. Then we got the wire itself, is really super sturdy on this particular model, so that's great. There's really not a whole lot of give in that at all, so good quality. And then when we load this, you'll notice that it doesn't have the 5 springs that I mentioned, but it has this mechanism here operated by this switch, and it's a quick release or easy release system, but it does have 5 splines. You just slip that on easily. The roller sleeve slips on, and then we just push down to lock it, and then the roller sleeve turns. And then when we're finished at the end of the day, instead of struggling trying to remove this, just pull the trigger and it slides off. So last but not least, we have this model, and again the wire is very sturdy, has the 5 springs on the cage, so when we put our sleeve on, there's some resistance there. It doesn't come off that easily. But what I like about this is that it has a built-in extension pole, like so, and then this one like that. So that gives you a 3-foot reach, all built in to the cage. And I must say that if we're doing a small job, if we're doing like a small repair, and we need to carry some drywall tools, and then our paint tools and whatever else we might need, this comes in really handy, because poles are awkward to transport, and with this built-in pole on the cage just to do a small repair job, it's fantastic. So keep that in mind. If you see those in the stores, that's a good buy. I hope you enjoyed that short video on the 9.5-inch roller cages. You know, when you go out there, there's an awful lot of inexpensive tools, and they really don't serve you in the short run, and definitely not in the long run. They can create more frustration than the job is worth sometimes. Keep these things in mind. I highlighted more of the positive things to look for, and if you find that the piece that you're looking at doesn't live up to any of those criteria, not to purchase that item. But there's a lot of good products out there too, so it's your decision which brand you go for, but at least you have some information now on what makes a quality roller. If you have any comments or questions about this video, feel free to leave them and I'll try to respond. And in the meantime, you could like the videos and by all means subscribe. Until next time, it's been Craig the Muskoka Painter, helping you take the pain out of painting.